encourage them.
The honourable member for Vancouver-Granville, Ms. Wilson-Raybould.
Well, thank you, Chair. I was very troubled to hear that a CBC radio host in the Yukon felt compelled to resign because, as an Indigenous person, she could not speak her truth. While we know the Broadcasting Act states that the Canadian broadcasting system should reflect the linguistic duality and multicultural and multiracial nature of Canadian society and the special place of Indigenous peoples, it would seem there are some challenges. So I ask, does the Minister of Heritage share the concern of some journalists that problems of systemic racism in Canada are still existing within the institution of the CBC? And will the government now acknowledge the need to recognize the jurisdiction of Indigenous governments?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank the member for this important question. As the Prime Minister has stated on numerous occasions, my apologies, I will start again. I was not on the English channel. So thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you for the important question. As stated by the Prime Minister on numerous occasions, our government recognizes that systemic racism exists in Canada, and we have made a commitment to do everything we can to combat it in whichever organizations of the Canadian government, Madam Speaker.
Ms. Wilson-Raybould.
Thank you. So when I was in the government and as a minister, I learned the term red meat issues. I understand these issues to be ones that challenge societal norms, that are not politically expedient to address because they can lose you votes, even though addressing them is the morally right and smart thing to do. Mostly these are issues addressing inequality and the most marginalized in our society. In the justice system, examples include mandatory minimum penalties, defunding police, and even investing in restorative justice. Red meat issues often become defining issues for society and for governments as the world changes. Surely now these issues are politically less of a consideration than the tragic reality of even more slain Indigenous Canadians at the hands of police, or thousands of Indigenous people still incarcerated or living in poverty. Will this government please finally commit to the necessary work originally promised in 2015 and repeal in the justice system the vast majority of mandatory minimum penalties, assuring the necessary discretion for judges, and meaningfully invest in restorative justice measures?
The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, I thank the honourable member for her question as well as her work as Minister of Justice and indeed my predecessor. Madam Speaker, this is an important time. This is a time when we recognize systemic racism. This is a time when we've recognized systemic over-incarceration of Indigenous peoples, of Black peoples in our criminal justice system. Madam Speaker, this is a time when we need to look at all potential options to reduce what is a shameful overrepresentation in our criminal justice system. Too often, Madam Speaker, racialized peoples, Indigenous peoples have experienced prejudice and systemic discrimination in our justice system, and that has to change.
Ms. Wilson-Raybould.
On to another red meat issue. In British Columbia, we are in the 5th year of the opioid overdose public health emergency crisis. Sadly, May marked the deadliest month of overdose-related deaths. We're halfway into the year and have currently passed 500 deaths caused by overdose. Many of the deaths are related to COVID-19 measures that have prevented people from accessing supervised consumption sites and are overdosing alone. While the province has welcomed the federal backing of safe supply exemption back in March, it comes to expire in September of 2020. Echoing the call of the Chief Coroner of BC and Dr. Henry, more is needed from the federal government, more action. Will the government provide the necessary supports to the province and help support safe supply initiatives in the provinces?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and it's been a pleasure to work with the province of British Columbia on innovative ways to work on the tragic situation of opiate overdose. In fact, I remain committed to working with the province, and in fact, any province that wants to work towards solutions that treat people who use substances with the dignity that they deserve. Madam Speaker, this is a complex issue. We're working closely with our partners to make sure that we can prevent more lives from being lost.